I Himanshi am back again with the video, and in this video we'll be covering the topic assessment of psychological attributes. So the first time I just read this topic, I just read out the name of this topic from the book. I was like, this is going to be boring. But well, my interest in psychology made me dive into more, made me kind of read read more researches related to it, and therefore in this video I'll try my best to share my insights about this topic, or share my own personal understanding of this topic, and which I think would make this topic interesting for you. So let's start with the same. So to actually start with this topic, I would like you all to think about the question. I would like you all to think about an answer to this question that I'm going to say right now. So hear it out clearly. Yeah, what is the main aim of a psychologist? I repeat again, what is the main aim of a psychologist, right? So I want you all to probably pause the video, think about it for a minute or two, and then unpause the video when you have some sort of answer in your head, right? So now let's dive into the answer. Let's try and understand what's the major aim of a psychologist. And we'll be understanding this aim with the help of 3 pointers, right? Right. So the first aim of a psychologist, or rather the discipline of psychology, is to understand human behavior. I'm focusing on human behavior here, although we all know that psychology overall is trying to understand the functioning of human mind and behavior. But the psychologist's major aim is to understand human behavior. Now, when I say understanding human behavior, I'm pretty sure you guys will be like, well, I knew this, right? So this is a very vague thing because we keep repeating this, and we probably know it as a part of our definition of psychology. So how do we expand it more, right? Let's look at the second point. Understanding clients, right? So any psychologist would have to deal with some or the other person who would reach out to them for help, and that is what those people I'm referring to them as clients, right? So there will be one or two clients, some or the other clients who will always be reaching out to you for any kind of problem that they're dealing with, and they probably need help regarding solving that problem, or getting a way around, figuring out a way around that problem. So they'll reach out to you, they'll reach out to a psychologist with regard to taking help, right? So for taking help to solve that problem. So that is what those people I'm gonna refer to as clients here, right? So how do we understand clients, right? So we understand the problems that they're dealing with. We understand the kind of person they are, that is how they react to different situations. We kind of try and make a mental image of those clients, right? So probably we'll be able to understand how that client will behave in different situations or towards different people. We'll also try to understand what their life looks like, what their daily life looks like. We'll also try to understand what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, or basically what they need to improve upon, right? And these problems can range from, they might have problems that range from the stress that is caused by day-to-day problems, but they also might be suffering from disorders such as that of depression and anxiety, and also even more severe disorders like schizophrenia, hallucination, etc., right? So now, understanding human behavior is established through understanding clients, and after we gain an understanding of our clients, of their life, what do we actually do? What is the major aim? Guys, pretty easy. Helping them. By them I mean people or clients, right? In leading a better life. So a better life with respect to mental health, emotional health, etc., etc., right? I don't need to dive into details of the same. You guys can join the dots. So just as I said, it doesn't stop at understanding human behavior. So we have to dive into details, and according to me, this is the threefold understanding of the major aim of a psychologist. So the conclusion that we can draw from this threefold process is that this process is not that easy. This is because it takes a lot of time and effort for a psychologist to understand any client that approaches them. So, before jumping to the major issue that is troubling a client, the psychologist needs to put in a lot of efforts just to know the client. So, if I am a psychologist and you reach out to me one day with any kind of problems that you have, can you just imagine me imagine me saying the very first sentence as that, okay, please tell me the kind of problems you're dealing with, and tell me how can I help you. Like such a vague sentence without even getting to know you, but without even putting in efforts to know the kind of person you are, where you've come from, right? So therefore, this process of getting to know the client is very lengthy, takes a lot of time, and also takes a lot of efforts, right? So now, what does the primary aim become? Let's just summarize all this threefold process in a line or in a phrase. So what does the primary aim become? Getting to know the person one is dealing with, right? So this is the primary aim, the first and foremost aim of a psychologist, dealing with, right? So that is why, to accomplish this aim in any psychological setting, in any mental health setting, to accomplish this aim, assessment is very important. So that is the major topic that we wanted to discuss, and finally we'll be trying to understand the details of this topic now, right? Right, so now before again starting to define assessment, another thing, how do you think that psychologists take the very first step in understanding a client, right? So usually it's a procedure that is followed in many mental health settings. What they do is that nowadays the sessions, they are booked online. So anyone who wants to reach out to a psychologist, they go to a website and they probably book a session with the psychologist. Now, what the psychologists usually do is they administer tests, right? They administer tests to the client. So even before they hold the very first session with their client, they kind of have a rough image of their client in mind, because they will have the results of the test in hand, so they can probably kind of join the dots that, or maybe try and predict that, okay, this person might be such kind of a person, might behave to certain situations in certain ways, something of that sort, right? So obviously in such settings, personality tests are very important, right? So the psychologist will administer the personality test to the person, and they will get the scores in hand. They will take out the results. They will have the results in hand, analyze the test, everything. The whole procedure will be carried out before we hold the very first session with the client, right? So therefore, this will kind of help the psychologist to develop a little bit of idea of what kind of the client they're going to be dealing with, right? So this is what assessment is all about, and this was the very layman understanding of what assessment is all about. So right, so now let's try and define assessment, right? Let's try and define assessment. So assessment, the first thing we need to remember is that assessment is the very first step in understanding any psychological attribute, right? So usually in a mental health setting, it's usually the psychological attribute that we're going to focus on is personality. But obviously, we're just not going to have mental health settings. Psychology is used in many other settings also, such as selection, diagnosis, etc. So, psychological attributes can be interest, can be aptitude, can be personality, can be intelligence, etc., etc. So, the very first step, so assessment is basically the very first step in understanding any psychological attribute. And Second, it has two components. It has two components. And I'm just going to name these two components. First, we have measurement of a psychological attribute, and then we have evaluation of that attribute. Now let's deal with these two components one by one. The first is measurement of a psychological attribute, which is followed by the evaluation of that very same attribute, right? So first, measurement. So I'm just going to write down the important points. Right. So measurement is kind of when you hear the word measurement, you can actually get to know that it's a very mathematical or a statistical term. So it's usually defined as the process of assigning values, right? So assigning values. So it's a process of assigning values to properties of people, places, events, etc. And when I say these values, these are usually numerical values, right? So numbers. So again, it's a statistical procedure. That's the second important point here, statistical procedure. Statistical procedure, right? So let's take an example now of measurement of a psychological attribute. As you remember, always measurement, link it with numbers, link it with a mathematical or a statistical procedure. So we're trying to assign values, right? So, and these values can be assigned to people, places, events, etc. Anything that you can think of. So example is that I administer an intelligence test to you, and you complete the test, I score the test, and what is the outcome? The outcome is a number. That number is nothing but a score that represents your intelligence, right? So therefore, another thing is outcome is a number. And that is why measurement is a quantitative process. So I have made these pointers, and once you listen to the video, re-watch the video again and again, you'll be able to join the dots. So it's a mathematical or a statistical procedure that involves that kind of indulges in assigning values, that is numerical values, to various events, people, etc. It's a quantitative process because the measured outcome, the final outcome, is always a number, right? So the first step in the assessment of any psychological attribute is the measurement of that psychological attribute, right? Let's move on to the second step, second component, evaluation, right? Now by evaluation, we're trying to understand the value. So we are trying to understand the meaning of that value. So how do we define it? Determining or understanding the value of something, right? The value of anything, X, Y, Z, right? So now we've gotten that number, right? So now I have administered the test to you and I have the results in hand. The outcome is a score that represents your intelligence. But do I actually know the meaning of that score? What is the use of that score? I've gotten the score, but do I even know that I can implement it anywhere, or does it actually mean something in real life? That is what evaluation is going to do. It's going to help us understand what does the numerical value that we obtained through the measurement process mean in real life. So again, we can take an example here. So the intelligence score there, I have gotten your intelligence score, and that score can probably represent maybe average intelligence or high intelligence or low intelligence. So therefore, I can make a prediction that because this person has scored this, he is average or high or low at intelligence. Therefore, these would be the impacts on his functioning, on his physical functioning, on his mental functioning, etc. So evaluation will try to, will help us in attaching a meaning to that numerical value that we obtained with the help of measurement, right? So therefore, it becomes a qualitative process. Why? Because the focus is meaning, right? The focus is meaning, understanding. So it becomes a qualitative process. Right. The final thing that I would like, all of you to understand here is that assessment is a broader term. We have actually, why? So I have been, definitely talking about testing a lot, right? So I can administer any kind of test to you in chest, aptitude, personality, intelligence. So these are all a part of assessment, okay? So assessment is kind of a broader term. Why am I saying so? Because assessment can be done or assessment can be carried out with the help of various methods. And one of them is testing. Obviously, others are also there. Observation is there, right? Case study is there, and many more. Obviously, I can also put the client in an experimental condition, and etc. etc. And the list can go on. So therefore, these various methods, as I'm saying, testing, observation, case study, these are the narrow terms that fall under assessment. So basically, so all of these testing, observation, case study, they fall under assessment. So assessment basically takes the help of all these methods, right? Assessment can only be accomplished if we efficiently, make use of any of these methods. And therefore, we can understand the client, and therefore, finally we can accomplish the aim of understanding human behavior. So that is all for this section, guys, and I hope I could make this topic very interesting for you guys. Try to explore way beyond the book. And again, if you have any insights to share or anything that you would want to clear, anything that's not clear to you, so please put them in the comment box, and I would be glad to clear your doubts. So thank you guys, and see you in the next video.